What does it take to build a great country? This question has many perspectives, and its answer is quite complex, especially when we talk about one of the largest economies in the world, whose unique edge in culture and technology has helped shape the way that we live and work. However, if we were to identify one underlying factor that runs through all fields of activity that have made the United States of America the country it is today, that factor would be innovation.
The success of the US has been driven by innovation. And I think US has been at the forefront of the innovation frontier for several decades now. Whether it's technology, whether it's biology, whether it's space, I think a lot of the leading ideas that are shaping the world around us is coming from the US. And so in many ways for the US, innovation is the lifeblood. It's actually what keeps the country attractive for immigrants, attractive for minds from outside, attractive for professors and students to come here. And that really is the beauty of this country. So I think innovation is really the lifeblood of America.
Innovation today is multidisciplinary. It's not just a single person or the single subject. It happens at the intersection of domains, bringing in expertise from many different areas. So when we work in complex fields like computer chips, we need to bring in skills and expertise in chemistry, material science, and physics. It happens in an ecosystem. It's not one company. It's multiple companies, universities, government collaborating in order to innovate.
Innovation is a very overloaded word today, right? It applies to a very wide range of activities from creation, new patents, for example. But I think that a critical importance in innovation today is about creating value. You have to look at an innovation that will go to the market and create value for our clients, because invention by itself not necessarily creates value. Sometimes we have a very creative people that have a lot of ideas, but that are not practical in creating value in the marketplace.
So the United States has been very focused on innovation since the beginning. And what that means is we're focused on ways to use science and engineering fundamental research for the benefit of all of society. Probably the biggest change is that we now focus on startups as a vehicle to execute that innovation. And that's because of a number of changes in the economy in general. But our focus on innovation has never wavered. We're very interested in ways to use science and engineering research for the public good.
So the Council on Competitiveness was founded in 1986 at a really special and a somewhat disturbing moment in U.S. history. In the mid-1980s, the United States somehow woke up and realized that we were losing our competitive advantage, in particular to what we sometimes call Japan Incorporated, the large industrial resurgence that we saw coming out of Japan, as well as the West German export engine. And what we found was that U.S. companies simply could not compete in the global marketplace, mainly because our quality of our products had fallen so much compared to our global competitors. And so the U.S. Council was created and founded by a group of leaders from all sectors of our economy to address that challenge, to understand what was happening, but even more important, how could we respond and change what we perceived to be a dire situation where economists and leaders were projecting that U.S. living standards would be declining, that the next generation of Americans would live a life worse than their parents or grandparents. So it was a very pivotal moment where really all sectors of our economy and our society came together. What has happened is that the United States, because of these efforts, actually found a way to resurge and found a way through the deployment of innovative technologies and practices to become yet again one of the world's, if not the most, one of the most competitive nations.
One of the things that strikes me or struck me about America when I came here first, and what impresses me even today, is the sense of leadership. America wants to lead the world, and every region also wants to help create some kind of a leading effort, a leading technology, a leading cluster. So there is a sense of trying to aspire for the best.
But what does it take for a country's industry to remain competitive in a globalized, ever-changing world?
Certain basic things that every country must do if it wants to actually grow and innovate. Number one, take care of your human capital. That's how economists call it. That means people. Take care of your people, right? The second is, which is a must for countries, is that stability in the political system. You see how difficult this is, right? The third very basic condition is a legal system that works. And I would put forth a significant investment in infrastructure.
In 2021, the innovation infrastructure in the U.S. received a major boost when new legislation addressing technological research and development passed the Senate.
This act, which is actually a monstrous structure, it is very, very interesting. It started during the Trump administration. It started in 2020. It was one act that was bipartisan. Both big parties went for it, and it was called, still it is called, the Endless Frontier Act. This act had significant funding involved. The idea was that the United States is facing a completely new world, as we were describing. We needed a sort of a major leap forward in competitiveness. We are talking about several $100 billion of federal funding. Covers basically all the critical technologies that we are interested in, and very much is focused on the developing competition with China.
The bill also established a Directorate for Technology and Innovation in the National Science Foundation, NSF, and various programs and activities.
So the National Science Foundation is a federal agency that focuses on funding science and engineering research across all the different disciplines. And our mission is really to fund fundamental science for the benefit of the country and for the health and welfare of our citizens. So the NSF, along with many other federal agencies, support small businesses and support startups because they have the opportunity to have disproportionate impact on the nation's economy. These programs have really grown over the last 30 years because we understand much more about the important role that these small companies play. And therefore, we hope to support the economy in multiple ways. First, by bringing these technologies out of the laboratory and into society, and second, by doing it through these small businesses that have the opportunity to really have major economic impact on their own.
When I say R&D, and I mean research and development, it has to go one stage further. It is insufficient for nations like Brazil and the United States to only invest in basic research. Why do I say that? Because basic research today, because of the tools that I mentioned we all have around the world, is globally fungible. So for countries to invest in basic research, then to only see the benefits go abroad, that is a positive. I'm not saying we should be a closed global economy, but nations have an obligation to their citizens to help capture and leverage that value and that investment in their own countries. And so it is not just about investing in basic R&D. It is about taking that investment and leveraging it and finding ways to scale and deploy disruptive technologies domestically that will transform a domestic but also a global market. So that's the big opportunity, is that translation, that linkage from the basic education all the way up to higher education, but then ultimately deploying into society and creating new companies. Small and medium-sized firms matter. They rely upon investment from the public sector. And this gets back to our earlier point, why partnerships matter. Because for these small and medium-sized firms, they often don't have the ability or the time to really invest in these partnerships. We have to make time. We have to help them find a way to be connected into these global value chains. And that's where large firms, large universities, and even the government sector can play a very positive role to connect these supply chains, these small and medium-sized firms, bring them in, help them innovate, support them, because the outcomes will be greater success and productivity that will accrue to the larger partners. So it is a virtuous cycle, and it should be seen as a virtuous cycle.
So technology in the United States is sort of developed in many different places, and today primarily in industry, not in the government, in industry, as a result of independent decisions. So there is many individuals involved in taking decisions, right? This is a very different system from what exists in other places. If you are ahead of others, you need the people who do innovation need to be free to take decisions in many different directions. There cannot be a ministry that will tell them what to do. If you are a country that is following, then yes, you see where the others have gone, so you may want to go that direction or the other, and the system should be able to focus. But as you reach at the forefront, the government needs to retreat, go back, and let the private sector operate. There is a very important role for the government then, because it needs to make the playing field level. It needs to be a good referee, needs to have good courts, needs to have good infrastructure, needs to actually make the game fair for everybody. And that's very important.
But also, suppliers are important. We sit at the top of a supply chain, but our supply chain, 12,000 companies in almost 60 countries, right? And that group, we have very developed supply chain training programs, recognition for excellence. We really engage our supply chain partners because they are part of the aviation ecosystem. Their ability to innovate contributes to our ability to develop and deliver innovation to our customers. And because of our century-long effort and experience innovating, and just in the last 10 years alone, Boeing has invested $60 billion in innovation in R&D. Much of that designed expressly around the topics we're talking about, this relentless press for efficiency, which reduces cost and reduces carbon emissions as well.
Let's begin with the thought that diversity is a core value at IBM. If you go back to 1911, from the very start, IBM included black employees, female employees, at a time when this was unheard of. In 1914, we had our first disabled employee. In 1935, I believe it was, IBM made the statement of gender equality, equal pay for equal work. So diversity has always been one of our core values and remains that way. Why? Because diverse teams innovate better. They bring in disparate viewpoints.
Let me say that diversity is very important to innovation, and we have a number of different types of diversity in the Bay Area. We have diversity of geographical area. Of course, we have mountains to ocean, to beaches, to lakes, to prairies. We have diversity of cultures, people coming from many different areas. Many of them have come to the Bay Area to study at the diverse educational institutions that are here, graduate, undergraduate, professional, vocational, there are over 300 different higher education institutions, organizations in the Bay Area. So there's a very diverse talent pool. The cultures that people come from draw from around the world, and this has been a very important part of the energy, the commitment, the drive to do something that no one has done before, and the willingness to take risks.
So diversity is critical, right? Look at the demographics of the world. If you are not diverse, you are not representative of your customer base. And so if you truly believe that the only way to create healthy ventures is to be customer driven, then you better know who your customers are. The best way to know who your customers are is to basically have the population of your startup or your large company or your startup inside your large company reflect the customer base that you're going after. And so it's really, really quite important to basically, and it literally is across a very wide spectrum. Obviously there's race and gender are a big part of it, but we have learning differences that need to be addressed. So for instance, if 1 in 3 entrepreneurs is dyslexic, 1 in 3 artists is dyslexic. So, but if everything all your product material is written and you don't do anything in film, then you're missing out on basically reaching a huge swath, 1 in 5 people in the world. So you've really got to be thinking across a much broader spectrum of diversity than I think has been traditionally identified.
If you're designing a service that multiple people kind of come into, you want to make sure that that service accommodates them and not only accommodates them, but sort of is welcoming to them in a number of different ways, and that you don't assume that people have certain abilities. So like you don't assume that someone can see, or you don't assume that someone can hear, and that the service that you're creating sort of accommodates for them. And so what we do to do that is we have to make sure that we're actively out there in the world being intentional about including points of view and including people who are not ourselves, right? So we don't design for the disability community. We strive to design with the disability community. We want our disability partners and the communities that we serve to be stakeholders in the products that we create. And so we actively try to work with them. We hire people with disabilities to make sure that they're part of the team. And then we actually actively go out and engage with nonprofit organizations and disability communities.
You cannot have ideas or representation without have groups of people that comes from different schools of thoughts, different cultures. And the best way to address in global way is to create coalitions of companies, coalitions of universities, and we work globally, collaboratively.
Competitive advantages of the US is what I would term as a cultural competitive advantage, because this is a society where you can take a Brazilian, take a Taiwanese, take a Chinese, and you can mix all of them together, and somehow they are able to become part of this culture very rapidly, and they are able to feel comfortable living in this country. If you don't feel comfortable living in a country, you'll never be able to attract and retain talent.
This country and universities are tremendous pillar behind the innovation and also the different ecosystems. Silicon Valley, the mythical Silicon Valley, but also, as we know, New York or Boston or other parts of the country, or Texas, Austin, so many different ecosystems that are linked to universities, are linked to entrepreneurs and facilitate innovation. Let's don't forget that you have so many government institutions that give the seed funding for these projects.
We had Mayor Bloomberg, who was himself a tech entrepreneur. He came to the realization about 10 years ago that the future of New York City was very much linked to technology. many of the key sectors in New York City. New York City is home of finance, home of retail, home of pharmaceuticals, home of media. They're getting impacted by technology tremendously. And he felt that the kind of technology innovation ecosystem that California, especially the Bay Area, had produced was somehow not present in New York City. So his leadership, his idea was to say, well, let's try to create that center of technology entrepreneurship in the heart of New York City. Now, what is very interesting is that he started with a university. Just as he saw that Stanford and Berkeley were really at the core of this academic innovation ecosystem cluster in the Bay Area, he said we have to get a top technology university in the heart of New York City. Now, Cornell Tech project today is very successful. We have almost 8 degrees that are offered across disciplines, across engineering, business, computer science, and they are also working in collaboration with the local entrepreneurs, local venture capitalists. So this connection that is being built up with the help of Cornell and Cornell Tech is a critical component of helping build the future of innovation in New York City. But what is interesting about this whole Cornell Tech system is it is a university at heart. So research and deep research is at the heart of the technology sort of system. It draws in talent around the world, including Technion, which is a major partner for us in Israel, and also has very close links with the local entrepreneurial, the whole New York City sort of environment.
Innovation is a global story. There is no single idea that will emerge in one country that will, from going forward, define our innovation future. Innovators in the United States have realized that they need to be looking all around the world. It's a constant scanning of the best and brightest ideas and people to integrate as a team to create the next big thing. And so those companies, those firms, and yes, those institutions, also academia, labor, our national labs, are all engaging in global partnerships and the understanding that the opportunity is so much larger if they do so.
It's important for industry to maintain strong relations with academia, with universities. Significant innovation occurs still within the university setting, and it's collaboratively working between industry and university in order to find some of these innovative discoveries in universities and figure out how to bring them into industry.
We have extensive relationships with universities and academic institutions around the world. I think there are really 2 key, kind of value propositions that lead us to engage so extensively with these groups. The first is we want to build our technical capacity, and we want to find very capable technical partners. They're a key part of our innovation team. The other key thing is the talent pipeline. We want to develop the leaders and the team members who will join Boeing for the next generation. That could be entry-level positions and also senior technical positions. So our relationships with universities are really built around those kind of 2 goals that they're seeking to achieve.
You cannot underinvest in people. Without people, you have no innovation. So that means investing in the various early stages of education, ensuring that you create a young population that will be open to and able to engage in the innovation economy. So that means training, education, access to tools, access to the internet, access to broadband. We're not small city states. We are large, multi-hundred million person economies. We have to have a manufacturing base to support a middle and rising middle class. And so that means we cannot rely upon 1 or 2 small sectors to drive our economy. We have to be very diverse in our sectoral approach. We have to have the fundamental research that will underpin industries of the future to provide jobs. And of course, the feedback loop is to provide training and education as people progress along their career.
A shining example of how education can promote the interest of people of all ages in science and innovation is the Exploratorium in San Francisco.
So the Exploratorium opened in 1969, and it was the first type of museum or science center of this kind to offer hands-on experiences for learners to engage in exploring the world around them. We support schools and young people in 3 primary ways. One is through school field trips. So schools in the Bay Area and even beyond come regularly to the Exploratorium on school field trips, where they come and they spend a day. It's free choice learning where they get to explore based on their own interests that they have, or sometimes teachers will structure the visit based on integrating with the curriculum that they're doing in school. The second way that we engage young people in the Bay Area is through our explainer program. So that we have a high school explainer program where young people come and they work at the Exploratorium as the facilitators on the museum floor with our visitors. And this is a youth development program where they're learning job skills, they're learning about science, they're learning about facilitation, and they're teaching one another, which is very important. And this has been a really robust program that's an important part of the ecosystem in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are the largest employer of high school age youth in San Francisco. And the third way is through teacher professional development. Right now we are working across the entire state of California to offer teacher professional development for elementary, middle, and high school teachers to strengthen their teaching of the next generation science standards in the classroom, where we're integrating through the science standards using the science and engineering practices with the science content and the cross-cutting themes in the curriculum. This is really new and challenging for teachers to implement, and so the Exploratorium supports teachers in building a network where they can support one another in the practices that they're developing in their classrooms, and also offering strategies and skills for doing that and growing their own practice.
But I would say our members have woken up to another new reality in the past 4 to 5 years. We defined early in the, I would say 2003, 2004, 2005 time period, that the United States would need to refocus again on understanding the role that innovation plays in our economy and how we could in some sense turbocharge our own innovation capacity and capability. But what we did not do in the early 2000s is we did not really understand, and in fact we underestimated the changes that would be unfolding across not only the United States but around the world over the past 20 to 30 years. And those are mainly what we see today is the emergence of a new global competition. Yes, I think everyone talks about the role that China is now playing in the global innovation competitiveness space, but it's not just China. What we see now are many nations, many regions competing successfully to really capture global value, global companies, global industries, and defining competitiveness in new ways. And so today, as I sit here in Washington, D.C., what's really changed is that global landscape. But there's another dimension. I talked a little bit about this just a second ago, technology.
Think about the course of the last 110 years during IBM's history. IBM has had to reinvent the method of computation multiple times. What I mean by this is when we first started, computation was mechanical, went to electromechanical, went to discrete devices like tubes, to transistors, to integrated circuits. We've been forced to continually reinvent the way that we do computing. We have a process we go through every year called the Global Technology Outlook. And this GTO, as we call it, we look at technology trends. We look at inflection points in technologies. We project forward in time. We look at the needs and trends in business, in society. And it allows us to think, where is technology going? And we make some projections. And then we are able to actually make decisions, investment decisions, based upon these trends. We can decide we want to enter new areas.
Technology and innovation are not synonymous, but innovation that is technology-based and driven has the ability to really change the productivity profile, yes, of companies, but also of regions and nations. And what we now see today is a very different technological landscape than we saw even 5 to 10 or 15 years ago. And that technological landscape is one of massive convergence and revolution. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that today there are technologies that are emerging and are interacting not just among themselves, but with other technologies to create new capabilities, new industries, new discoveries. And it is that convergence across disciplines and domains, across sectors, across companies and universities and labs, that is a defining moment of what we would call 21st century innovation. And so, coupled with the global transformation and this convergence and revolution of technologies, we see a vastly different innovation space, competitiveness space, than we did 20, 30 years ago.
So we are coming to an age that AI is becoming accessible and people can use and they can transform the way companies work by infusing AI in their business process and gain productivity and reduce costs.
AI has to serve people rather than people serving AI. In order to do that, AI has to have certain characteristics. And so, what are those characteristics? Well, the first characteristic, it has to be explainable. It can't be a black box where an answer comes out and you can't say why you got this answer. So if you're using an AI system to decide if someone gets a mortgage to purchase a house, you have to be able to tell them why they were approved or rejected. It has to be robust to attacks, to adversaries, to poisoning of the data. For example, if you rely upon an AI algorithm in your self-driving car, how robust is that to data poisoning? If someone was to sneak data into the training set that taught the AI model that if it saw a stop sign with a piece of yellow paper on it to be a speed limit sign instead of a stop sign, the car wouldn't stop, it would just keep going. You have to have a trust that that model is robust. It has to be fair. Right? Humans, when they make decisions, have inherent bias. We don't want that bias propagated into the AI models. They have to be free of bias and fair. AI should not be thought of as replacing a person. So think of the AI system as greatly augmenting the professional's capabilities by bringing vast amounts of data to their fingertips.
One can't talk about innovation in the U.S. without mentioning the San Francisco Bay Area in California, home of some of the biggest technology companies in the world. But what is the Silicon Valley?
Silicon Valley once referred to a geographical area and the focus around silicon production and integrated circuits that was once here. But it's now much more than that. It's an aspiration, it's an inspiration, it's a reference to wealth creation and success in technology.
Yeah, so the Silicon Valley has been a place, and now I think you're correct in identifying it as just really an experience. It's like a brand, it's a style at some level.
In the early days, it was really far more about just pure technology, and I think we're seeing so much more innovation across a wider spectrum, from education to healthcare to, still there's a lot of information technology going on, to entertainment, to tourism. I mean, you're just seeing innovation across a much wider spectrum than I think in the very early days of the Silicon Valley, because remember, the Silicon Valley in the early days was fueled by Department of Defense spending.
It was radar technology that was the initial technology focus in the Bay Area, which led into naval technology, which led into integrated circuits, which led to communication across distances, which led to Alta Vista, Yahoo, Google, Safari, LinkedIn, Zoom. Each one builds on the other. And in the Bay Area, having a variety of developments, innovations that are underway, allows the interplay between the knowledge and how it's exchanged, as well as the application and the market intelligence as the markets grow. When we think about, when we look at venture building,
through the lens of the Silicon Valley, we think about three things. Number one is we understand the customer, right? We're very customer driven. And so what's really the number one thing we're looking for is, do these entrepreneurs, are they focused on customer pain? And that's really, really important. I'll tell people all over the world that surveys are statistically significant but strategically irrelevant, because you've outsourced your visceral understanding and empathy for the customer to somebody else. So it's really important that they understand customer pain. No one in the world knew they wanted a microwave oven, a minivan, or a DVR, right? But what they could tell you is they weren't getting home in time to watch their favorite show, to cook a healthy meal, or they were having to cart an ever-increasing number of kids, dogs, and sporting equipment to myriad places. So they could tell you their pain. They couldn't tell you what the solution is. So we take that pain, we marry it with the art of the possible. What are the current technology and trends that are accessible to you as an entrepreneur, whether you're in a big company or you're in a startup, that will allow you to marry it with that pain to solve the problem? And then we place a series of small bets. We run pilots, we run experiments. Because in Silicon Valley, we look at funding like an onion. Every layer of onion is a layer of risk. Could be market, could be technical, could be financial. And so the goal of the best entrepreneurs is to remove the greatest amount of risk on the least amount of capital.
So we see three things that large corporations are doing. They're founding corporate venture funds, and that allows them to be able to make small investments and make small bets to learn where the innovation's happening all around the world in areas that might affect their business. So we're working with companies like TDK Corporate Ventures and Hypertherm Ventures and Xerox Ventures and others to help do that. A second area is that people are working at the executive level and looking at very specific concepts, either mergers acquisition opportunities or new innovation areas. They're building ecosystem maps and market maps and things like that to discover where these opportunities are. There you're trying to identify not just the startups, but what are the large companies doing, figuring out the white space, where are the opportunities that are going to occur. And then finally, we see people that are working on innovative ways to partner and find ways to harness the power and the development happening out of the startup community. You know, we see large companies and they build programs where they'll evaluate 200 startups a year. They'll select 20 of those startups and they'll help make those startups successful, and then they'll also glean the knowledge and the insight and the innovation from those startups. So it's a very good give to get relationships. So those are three ways that we see people disrupting themselves from the outside in.
And in Silicon Valley, we have this thing called co-opetition. At any point in time, you might be competing with somebody for a term sheet, but then that same company you're competing with is also on a board with you in this other startup where you're collaborating together. And so there's this constant movement, this constant dynamism that exists, but in the end, it's a very, very collaborative and cooperative experience. And you will see there's a lot of people who, where serendipity plays a big role. You just happen to be sitting next to, you're a big company who meets a startup, you're a venture capitalist who meets an entrepreneur. You just find that and you just kind of have to be ready to jump on it.
Education, diversity, entrepreneurship, government support. Those are the factors that contribute to a healthy, productive ecosystem. And in the 21st century, they have to be articulated around a major challenge of our time: sustainability.
The U.S. Council on Competitiveness considers issues around sustainability and resilience not in opposition to competitiveness, but as fundamental drivers and supporters of competitiveness. We will not be a productive, prosperous society if we are not sustainable and resilient, as well as innovative. So innovation, sustainability, and resilience are the three stools, or the three legs of our competitiveness stool. That's our fundamental belief.
Last year, we created a new position in the company. It's our Chief Sustainability Officer. That person's job is to articulate and to drive change across business units inside the company, giving all of us a key focus on sustainability. So it doesn't matter if you work in the sustainability office. If you work in supply chain or engineering or the law office, you have sustainability running through your your mind and impacting how you conduct your business. So that way we have a cross-cutting commitment across the entire company to sustainability.
The U.S. is moving efforts today to create the industry of tomorrow. But what's next? What are the challenges to keep building a prosperous, sustainable, and innovative future?
I think important issues for people who care about technology, people who want to build strong economies, is to think about Society 5.0 and what is the society that we want to create. If we think about people and information technology, we must think about the social structures, the quality of life, and use technology to enhance the human experience.
And when you look at history never shown people becoming obsolete, right? Because we are people and we are very creative and we are the creators of technology.
Every country has a lot of very bright human talent, and it is our collective challenge to be able to educate them better. But I would go one step further and say it is not just only education. I think we need to be able to inspire young people, inspire students, aspire for better things. And the same thing can be achieved by, for example, inviting entrepreneurs who have been successful or people who have succeeded in some professional aspect to come back and interact much more with the students. You can do it in different ways, but I think education is not just a question of basic mathematics and reading, writing, but today I think we have to focus on inspiration, inspiring young people to do the best that they can, and in fact, a lot of young people want to help make the world a better place. And so how do we help them to help make the world a better place?
But I think the positives from the Silicon Valley mindset are this fast-moving, risk-oriented, lots of capital to work with, two of the best universities in the world in Stanford and Berkeley right here, graduating people. So all of those things are very positive and they still exist today. But at the end of the day, when you look at the statistics, the numbers that are being generated out of the Silicon Valley and places like it, Seattle and things like that, are still leading the world by a substantial margin.
When I wake up in the morning and I come to my office and think about competitiveness and innovation, that's what excites me. I am lucky enough to have the opportunity to work with some of the most interesting CEOs, chief technology officers, university presidents in the world. But it is their thinking and their desire to unleash this greater innovation capability that excites me the most, to be broader, to be more inclusive, and then ultimately to sustain that and to really set up the U.S. economy for success over the next half of the century.